My name is Savannah Blake. I'm 29 years old, and 3 weeks ago, my life changed with a single document, my grandfather's will. Walter Blake wasn't just my grandfather. He was the backbone of our family, the founder of Blake's Hardware, a regional chain of hardware stores spanning 3 states. To most people, he was a successful businessman. To me, he was everything: a mentor, a protector, and the one person in my family who truly saw me. The day after his funeral, my mother, Linda, asked to meet at the family home. I assumed she wanted to reminisce or perhaps sort through Grandpa's belongings together. Instead, she greeted me with a tight smile and a single line. "You'll be signing everything over to me, Savannah. I'm the rightful heir." I laughed, thinking she was joking, but her eyes were ice. When I told her no, that I hadn't even seen the will yet, let alone agreed to anything, her voice dropped. "You'll regret this." That was the moment I realized the real grieving hadn't even begun. What followed wasn't mourning. It was war. This morning I received a text message. "Family meeting, be there." No explanation. No kindness, just a command. And now, I'm driving toward the home where I grew up, the same driveway where I learned to ride a bike and once scraped my knees chasing fireflies. But today it feels like enemy territory. I don't know exactly what's waiting for me on the other side of that door. But I do know one thing. I won't let them take what Grandpa entrusted to me. Not without a fight. My grandfather Walter was the kind of man people noticed. Not because he was loud or flashy, he wasn't up, but because he carried himself with quiet certainty. He built his first hardware store with a small loan and a lot of sweat. Over the next 40 years, he turned that single storefront into a thriving business with 15 locations. While other kids hung posters of rock stars or athletes in their rooms, I had a framed photo of Grandpa standing proudly in front of his original shop. That picture still hangs in my apartment. From a young age, I gravitated toward him. During family gatherings, I'd sneak into his study and watch him work, studying invoices, penciling notes into margins, checking budgets with a red pen and calculator. While my cousins played video games and my mom bragged about her latest designer bag, I was learning what it meant to build something that mattered. At 13, Grandpa invited me to visit one of his stores on a Saturday morning. I thought I'd just be tagging along, but instead, he handed me a clipboard and said, "Let's check inventory." I didn't know what I was doing, but I followed his lead. He showed me how to spot shrinkage in the numbers, how to evaluate what was selling and what wasn't, and how to greet employees with genuine interest, not just authority. That first visit turned into a tradition. Every Saturday I joined him at one of his stores. Over time, he taught me how to negotiate supplier contracts, how to calculate profit margins, and how to recognize loyalty in people. "Your business is only as strong as the people running it when you're not around," he told me once. That stuck. While my mother chased status, Grandpa was passing on something far more valuable: wisdom. Growing up, I didn't have the words for it. I just knew something always felt off in our house. My mother, Linda, had expensive tastes and a bottomless sense of entitlement. She was Grandpa's only child, and she never let anyone forget it. While he built a business brick by brick, she spent freely and constantly designer handbags, spa retreats, impulsive home renovations that never got finished. My stepfather, Ken, was a quiet presence who enabled it all. Confronting Linda only led to shouting matches and slammed doors. So he went along with her choices, even when it meant remortgaging the house or racking up credit card debt they couldn't pay. By the time I was in high school, our family finances were in chaos. But Grandpa never said a bad word about my mother, not to her, and not to me. He tried to help in quiet ways. I saw it every time he handed her a check or covered one of her endless emergencies. But even I didn't know the full extent of it until years later. Meanwhile, Grandpa poured his energy into teaching me. He noticed that I asked questions, that I showed up, that I cared, and he responded with opportunity. He told me once, "You have your mother's fire, but your grandmother's sense. That's a rare mix, Savannah." When I was preparing to apply for college, Grandpa offered to pay my tuition in full, but somewhere between that promise and enrollment, the money disappeared. Suddenly, my mother needed it for family needs: my stepsister's braces, my stepbrother's therapy, the mortgage. Grandpa didn't argue, but he quietly gave me envelopes of cash when he visited my campus bookstore job. "Don't tell your mother," he'd whisper. He was trying to protect me. Even then, he knew a storm was coming. 2 weeks after Grandpa's funeral, we gathered in the law office of Mr. Harrison, his longtime attorney. The room was lined with old books and smelled faintly of cedar. I arrived early, hands clammy, unsure what to expect. My mother walked in wearing oversized sunglasses despite the indoor lighting, dressed head to toe in black designer clothes like she was attending a red carpet rather than a reading of the will. Brianna and Jared, my step-siblings, flanked her, and Ken stood behind them like a bodyguard. I sat alone, directly across the table. Mr. Harrison began reading the will, his voice measured and calm. Small bequests came first: charitable donations, retirement gifts for longtime employees, heirlooms for distant cousins. Then came the pause. And to my granddaughter, Savannah Grace Blake, I leave the remainder of my estate, including my business holdings, investment accounts, all real estate properties, and personal effects, with the exception of items otherwise specified in this document. Silence. It was as if time paused in that wood-paneled room. I felt like the air had been sucked from my lungs. My mother ripped off her sunglasses. "This has to be a mistake," she said sharply. "Read it again." Mr. Harrison adjusted his glasses. "There's no mistake. Your father made these instructions very clear." Her voice rose. "I'm his only child. He raised me. He wouldn't cut me out." "Mom, please," I whispered. "Don't you mom me," she snapped. "You knew. You manipulated him. You turned him against his own daughter when he was too weak to resist." Brianna's voice trembled. "Grandpa loved us all equally. He wouldn't do this." Jared stared at the table, silent. The meeting quickly dissolved into chaos, threats, accusations, tears. And yet, through it all, I sat frozen. Not because I felt victorious, but because I knew this wasn't over. It was only just beginning. The days after the will reading were a blur of calls, messages, and emotional ambushes. It started with text, short, biting, and relentless. Then came voicemails from Ken about doing the right thing and keeping the family intact. Brianna posted cryptic quotes on social media about betrayal and greed. Mutual family friends messaged me with feigned concern but thinly veiled judgment. What shocked me most wasn't the volume of pressure. It was how coordinated it felt. Like they'd rehearsed it. Like they believed they could shame me into surrendering everything. I tried to stay focused, showing up to work like nothing had changed, but my mother began calling my office multiple times a day. My supervisor, Michelle, eventually pulled me aside. "Savannah, is everything okay at home?" I tried to explain, briefly and without emotion. Michelle nodded, offered a few personal days, and told the receptionist not to patch through any more calls from Linda Carter. That night, I cried alone in my apartment. It wasn't the money, it was the betrayal. The way they had turned on me, as if I were a stranger. As if I'd stolen something, instead of simply receiving what Grandpa had chosen to leave me. Liam, my boyfriend, came over with takeout and his usual calm presence. He held my hand while I told him everything. "I can't take much more of this," I admitted. "Maybe giving it up would be easier?" He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he said softly, "This isn't about money anymore, Savannah. This is about your grandfather's trust. You're honoring him by standing firm." His words hit me harder than I expected. I realized then I wasn't just defending an inheritance. I was protecting a legacy. Liam encouraged me to speak with someone who understood the legal side of inheritance disputes. That's when I reached out to Samantha Reed, a friend of his and a respected estate attorney. During our first consultation, I laid everything out: every threat, every emotional push, every lie. Samantha listened carefully, then said, "Savannah, this isn't uncommon, but it's serious, and you need to protect yourself." Her advice was clear: document everything, keep records, and do not sign anything under pressure. Then she asked a question that stopped me. "Did your grandfather ever mention his wishes beyond the will? A journal, letters, emails?" I paused, then remembered someone. George Harmon, Grandpa's best friend for over 40 years. They played golf every Thursday, rain or shine. I hadn't seen George since the funeral, but something told me he might have answers. I called him that evening. He invited me for coffee the next morning. George met me at a quiet cafe, still standing tall despite his age. He hugged me like I was his own granddaughter. "I see Walter in you," he said, looking me over, same stubborn eyes. When I told him about the family's reaction, he sighed. "Walter was worried about this for years, Savannah. He hated how your mother handled money. It broke his heart." Then he reached into his coat pocket and handed me a sealed envelope. "He gave me this a few months before he passed, told me to give it to you if things got ugly." My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter, dated shortly after Grandpa's diagnosis. It outlined everything: his reasoning, his doubts about Linda, and his faith in me. "You're the only one who truly understands the value of what I've built." In that moment, I felt his presence more strongly than I had in weeks. He had prepared me for this. And I was ready. 3 weeks after the will was read, I received a text from my mother. "Family meeting, tomorrow at 3. Time to resolve this." No greeting, no explanation, no question mark. It felt less like an invitation and more like a summons. I showed the message to Liam over dinner. He frowned. "She's planning something, don't go alone." I agreed, but I also knew bringing Liam might make it worse. They'd accuse me of hiding behind someone else. So I called Samantha. "I want to go," I told her, "but I need backup." We made a plan. She'd wait in her car a few houses down. If anything felt wrong, I'd text her one word now. The next morning, I stopped by Grandpa's house, technically mine now, to retrieve a few files. In his study, behind the framed photo of his first store, was his old wall safe. The combination? My birthday. Inside, neatly filed, was a leather-bound journal. Grandpa's handwriting filled every page. I flipped through the entries. They were meticulous. Every loan to my mother, every conversation about money, every broken promise to repay. One entry caught my eye. March 14th gave Linda $15,000 for Jared's college apps. Knew it was a lie. "I'm too tired to fight anymore. This will be the last time." Beneath it, he'd added, "Arrangements finalized with Harrison. Savannah will face resistance, but she's got what Linda never did: character." I photographed every relevant page, sent them to Samantha. "This is exactly what we needed," she replied. "Bring the journal tomorrow, but only show it if necessary." That night, I packed everything: copies of the will, the letter from George, the journal. For the first time in weeks, I felt calm. Because this time I wouldn't be walking into their trap. I'd be walking into my own power. At exactly 3 p.m., I pulled into the driveway of my childhood home. Everything looked normal. The front yard was trimmed, the curtains drawn, but the air felt heavy, like the stillness before a storm. The door swung open before I could knock. My mother stood there, smiling like a hostess at a charity gala. "Savannah, right on time," she said sweetly. "Come in." Inside, the living room was staged like a tribunal. Brianna and Jared sat stiffly on the couch. Ken stood by the fireplace, arms crossed. But the two men in suits, strangers to me, were the real giveaway. "This is Mr. Vaughn and Mr. Ellis," my mother announced. "They're here to help us resolve this unfortunate misunderstanding." "Not lawyers?" she said when I asked. "Just advisors?" There was only one chair left, positioned directly across from everyone else. I took it without a word, resting my leather portfolio in my lap. "We've prepared a fair redistribution proposal," one of the men began. "You'd retain a portion of the estate, say 20%, and the rest would be transferred to Linda, the rightful heir." "And the business?" I asked. "Liquidated. Proceeds shared among the family." I glanced at Jared. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Then came the signature folder, slid across the coffee table like a peace offering wrapped in threats. I smiled. "Before I sign anything," I said, "I have a few questions." I looked at my mother. "When did you put down the deposit for the house in Naples?" Her face paled. "Ken told me it was 6 months ago, before Grandpa passed, before the will was even read." Ken shifted uncomfortably. "I never said that." "I recorded the call," I replied, pulling out my phone. "And that's just the beginning." One by one, I laid out the documents: journal entries detailing fake emergencies, screenshots of social media posts contradicting their stories, even Grandpa's handwritten letter explaining his decisions. "Your grandfather was manipulated," they tried to argue. "He was lucid when he wrote this," I said, holding up the letter. "And more importantly, he knew exactly who you were." The room fell silent. For once, there were no interruptions, no tears, no screaming. Just the sound of truth taking up all the air. When I stood to leave, no one stopped me. Not my mother, not Ken, not even Brianna, who looked down at her lap, too ashamed to speak. But it was Jared, my quiet, observant younger brother, who surprised everyone. "Wait," he said, his voice louder than I'd ever heard it. I paused at the doorway. I didn't know any of that, he said, eyes on our mother. I thought Savannah was being selfish. But now I see, you lied to all of us. Linda's expression turned cold. Sit down, Jared. No. He walked across the room and stood beside me. I'm leaving with Savannah. Ken started forward, his voice rising. You ungrateful. I held up my phone. This entire meeting has been recorded. Every threat, every lie. That stopped him cold. I walked out with Jared by my side, past the car where Samantha sat waiting. She stepped out as we approached. Are you okay? She asked, looking between us. He's coming with me, I said. She nodded. Let's go. That evening, our apartment was quiet. Jared sat on the pull-out couch staring at nothing. I handed him a mug of tea. You okay? He nodded slowly. I just feel stupid. I believed her. You're not stupid, I said gently. You're loyal. That's different. He looked at me. What happens now? Now, we build something better. In the days that followed, Samantha helped formalize the evidence. We filed Grandpa's journal and letter with the probate court, just in case anyone tried to contest the will. They didn't. I took a leave from my marketing job and started visiting Grandpa's stores one by one. Jared came with me when his class schedule allowed. He asked questions, took notes, listened. One morning, after a meeting with a regional supplier, I turned to him. You're a natural at this, you know? He smiled, shy but proud. I'm just remembering what Grandpa used to say. So was I. Every step forward felt like walking in his shoes. 6 months later, the world looked different. Jared was thriving in college, working part-time at one of the stores and interning with our lead operations manager. He had a spark in his eyes I hadn't seen in years. The business, once strained by complacency and a lack of vision, was slowly turning around. We launched a pilot showroom focused on sustainable building materials, an idea Grandpa once scribbled on a napkin but never had the time to pursue. Jared ran with it. I helped him polish the presentation, but the vision was his. We called it Blake Green. Meanwhile, I worked with Samantha to create 3 trusts, one for Jared's education, one small and conditional for my mother, just enough to keep her afloat, but with strict boundaries, and one charitable foundation in Grandpa's name to support young entrepreneurs from underprivileged communities. When I finally moved into Grandpa's home, I didn't redecorate much. I kept the study, turned it into an office Jared and I shared. We hung his portrait above the fireplace, his steady gaze a daily reminder of why we were doing this. Then, one evening, I found a handwritten note tucked in the back of his journal. I'd missed it before. The true measure of wealth isn't what you have, but what you do with it. Make it matter. I read it twice, then whispered, I will. In time, Brianna reached out. We met for coffee. She apologized, and for the first time, I believed her. Our relationship wasn't perfect, but it had a chance. As for my mother, she stayed distant, bitter, but no longer dangerous. I had drawn a line, and I knew she wouldn't cross it again. To anyone facing something similar, inheritance battles, guilt, emotional pressure, I'll say this. Protect your peace. Honor what was entrusted to you. Build something better. And remember, true revenge isn't cruelty. It's clarity. It's purpose. It's legacy. If this story resonated with you, share your own in the comments. Like, subscribe, and join us for more journeys where the quiet ones rise and the true legacy lives on.